Hello, everybody. This is Brad Swift, your Right on Purpose coach. Today I'm going to forego the introduction so we can get right into today's topic, which is the question, have the American voters just sealed the fate of our species on Earth? GePeTo, that's ChatGPT, and I weigh in on the question. One of my most important and consistent morning rituals is meditation. It helps me to get centered and focused for the day. Many days, that's about all that happens. And occasionally I fall back to sleep. Once in a while, I get a message from the great beyond, or at least that's how it feels. This morning was one of those times. A question came to me a day after the USA election results made it clear that the American voters have chosen Donald Trump to be our president for the next 4 years. The question, well, it's the title of this article and podcast. Have the American voters just sealed the fate of our species on Earth? A light topic, right? So after my meditation, I went to my AI writing teammate, who I refer to affectionately as GePeTo, and who is really ChatGPT, and entered this prompt. Please go in depth as an expert climatologist in addressing and exploring this question. What is the likely scenario if the USA continues to ignore and deny climate change for the next 4 years? Now, before I provide you with GePeto's response, let me tell you why I'm pondering these questions and sharing them with you. Our soon-to-be next president, Donald Trump, is a climate change denier. Or at least he doesn't believe that we humans have any influence on climate change. To verify this, I asked GePeTo this question. What facts can you provide me regarding Donald Trump's position on climate change? And here is the summarized response. Donald Trump's stance on climate change has been largely defined by skepticism, regulatory rollbacks, and an emphasis on fossil fuel production. Throughout his presidency, Trump consistently questioned the scientific consensus on climate change, at one point labeling it as a hoax and expressing doubt over the human role in global warming. In 2017, he withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement, arguing that its terms were economically disadvantageous, making the U.S. the only nation to exit the Global Climate Accord at the time. Under Trump's leadership, over 100 environmental protections were rolled back to prioritize energy independence and economic growth, especially for oil, gas, and coal industries. His administration promoted increased drilling on public lands and reduced vehicle fuel efficiency standards and sought to reduce support for renewable energy initiatives. In his 2024 campaign, Trump has indicated plans to double down on these policies if reelected, including repealing of the Inflation Reduction Act, which funds clean energy projects, and withdrawing from the Paris Agreement again. He has also expressed intent to end wind energy subsidies and further reduce energy efficiency regulations, underscoring his focus on traditional energy sources over climate-focused policies. Now, since GePeto's response as a climatologist is quite detailed, I'll start with the summary, the conclusion, then provide the details of GePeto's response for those of you who are in a rush. But if you are someone who cares for our Earth, as well as our ability to continue to live on it, please read and or listen to the whole response and then share it. Share it. Yes, share it with your friends, family members, hell, with everyone. After all, we're all in this together. And for the next 4 years, well, they may be some of the most challenging in our lifetimes. So, in summary, If the U.S. continues to ignore climate change for the next 4 years, the results will be an acceleration of climate-related damage that impacts the environment, the economy, and social stability. This delay will compound the challenges, making it increasingly difficult and costly to mitigate future damage. The consequences would be felt most acutely in the U.S., but would also ripple out globally given the U.S. influence and emissions footprint. In the coming years, climate-related policies and technologies will be crucial in defining the quality of life for future generations. Without concerted action, the U.S. risks facing escalating environmental, economic, and social costs, potentially surpassing our capacity to adapt. Even a 4-year period of denial could push us closer to a climate trajectory with catastrophic and irreversible impacts we may eventually be powerless to reverse. Okay, I'm taking a deep breath myself. Now, here for the details. If the United States, one of the largest greenhouse gas emitters and the world's biggest economy, were to continue denying and disregarding climate change for the next 4 years, the ramifications would be profound and far-reaching, not only for the U.S., but also for the global climate. Let's dive deeply into the various scenarios that may unfold across multiple domains: environmental, economic, social, and geopolitical. Number 1, environmental consequences, accelerating climate change impacts. Point 1, increased emissions. Without proactive federal climate policies, the U.S. would likely continue its reliance on fossil fuels, contributing significant amounts of carbon dioxide and methane to the atmosphere. This would accelerate global warming, pushing temperatures towards the higher end of the projected warming spectrum. Point 2, temperature rise and extreme weather. The lack of action would contribute to a temperature rise that could make heat waves more frequent, intense, and longer lasting. Areas across the U.S. would see hotter summers, which can increase heat-related illnesses and exacerbate drought conditions, especially in the Southwest. Rising sea levels and coastal damage. Higher global temperatures accelerate glacial melt and thermal expansion of seawater, leading to rising sea levels. Coastal cities like Miami, New York, and New Orleans would experience worsened flooding, saltwater intrusion into drinking water, and increased damage from hurricanes. With U.S. inaction, the global sea level rise may outpace current projections, threatening hundreds of billions of dollars in coastal infrastructure. Point next, loss of biodiversity and ecosystem collapse. As temperature rise and weather patterns shifts, ecosystems and species struggle to adapt. The U.S. has diverse ecosystems, from coral reefs in Florida to alpine tundras in the Rockies, many of which would face irreparable damage. Denial of climate science would lead to policies that further threaten protected lands, wetlands, and forests, disrupting wildlife, increasing extinction rates, and reducing biodiversity. Okay, hang in there with me, guys. Number 2, economic impacts. From infrastructure costs to agricultural decline. Infrastructural strain and recovery costs, point number 1. As climate disasters worsen, U.S. cities and states would face skyrocketing repair and recovery costs. Inaction on climate means more frequent, severe weather events such as hurricanes, wildfires, and floods. The federal government, states, the federal government, states, and private sectors would have to allocate billions more annually for disaster recovery. Point 2. Agricultural loss and food security issues. A changing climate affects agriculture through altered growing season, water scarcity, and increased pests and diseases. Droughts, extreme heat, and unpredictable rain patterns could jeopardize crop yields. States like California, a significant agricultural hub, could face severe challenges, leading to higher food prices and impacting national food security. Point 3. Reduce competitiveness in renewable energy. As other countries ramp up their renewable energy sectors and green technologies, the U.S. would fall behind economically by clinging to fossil fuels. Missing out on the global transition to renewable energy could mean losing out on trillions in potential revenue and millions of jobs. Additionally, clean energy innovation could move abroad, making the U.S. increasingly dependent on foreign energy and technology imports. And the last point in this section, healthcare cost and worker productivity. Extreme temperatures, polluted air, and climate-related diseases would increase healthcare costs and impact worker productivity. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that's the CDC, have already noted rising health issues related to heat stress, vector-borne diseases, and respiratory problems, all of which would worsen without climate action. Major point number 3, social implications. Increased inequality and population displacement. Marginalized communities suffer disproportionately. Climate change disproportionately affects low-income and marginalized communities, which are often located in vulnerable areas like floodplains or urban heat islands. Without actions, these communities would face increased health risks, housing insecurity, and economic hardships. Climate inaction could amplify existing inequalities, leading to further social unrest and deepening divisions. I got to pause for a moment. My dog's over on the bed, on his couch, sleeping and having a dream, and is kind of getting my attention a little bit here. So anyway, back to the point. Okay, number point 2, climate migration and displacement. As certain areas become uninhabitable due to flooding, heat, or fires, internal migration would increase, placing strain on cities as they absorb climate-displaced populations. The southwestern U.S., already experiencing drought and extreme heat, could see population shifts that strain resources in cooler areas. Public health risk and mental health. Next point. Inaction on climate change would lead to increased health risks, not only from direct impacts like heat stroke and respiratory illness, but also from indirect impacts on mental health. Extreme weather events, loss of livelihood, and the anxiety of an uncertain future contribute to psychological stress, which on a large scale could impact public health systems. All right, continuing to breathe here, guys. Stay with me. Major point number 4, geopolitical consequences. Loss of global leadership and increased conflict. Point 1, diminished international influence and cooperation. By ignoring climate change, the U.S. would lose credibility and moral authority on the world stage, making it more challenging to influence global policies in other areas. Allies may lose trust, viewing the U.S. as unreliable or short-sighted, and may form coalitions without American involvement, isolating the country diplomatically. Next point, increased global instability and resource conflict. Climate change exacerbates resource scarcity, particularly with water and arable land. This scarcity can lead to regional conflicts, migration, and instability. The U.S. could face increased pressure to intervene in climate-induced conflicts abroad, costing resources and straining military readiness. Next point, trade impacts and economic isolation. Other nations, particularly in the European Union, are adopting carbon tariffs on imports from countries with lax environmental policies. Continued inaction could lead to carbon-related tariffs on U.S. goods, affecting the U.S. economy and increasing the cost of exports. This could lead to a reduced trade opportunities and damage U.S. economic growth. Point number 5, the last major point here. Potential for cascading and irreversible effects. Tipping points in the climate system is the first point. The Earth's climate system has thresholds, so-called tipping points, beyond which changes become irreversible. Continued inaction increases the likelihood of passing these tipping points, such as the collapse of the West Antarctic ice sheet or the thawing of permafrost, which releases vast amounts of methane. These changes are self-reinforcing and could lead to a runaway climate scenario where warming spirals beyond human control. Point, last one. Feedback loops and escalating warming. With every year of inaction, the likelihood of triggering feedback loops grows. For example, the Arctic ice melt reduces the reflective surface of the Earth, causing more heat absorption, which further accelerates melting. Deforestation, drought-induced fires, and permafrost thawing all create feedback loops that drive additional warming. A 4-year delay in action would increase the probability that we lock ourselves into these self-reinforcing cycles. Did you hang in there with me? If so, I much appreciate it. I know this has been a challenging question to consider, and I thank you for continuing to read and or listen. I know oftentimes when it comes to such matters as climate change, all we hear is doom and gloom. Well, it's my intention to delve into this in much more depth and return soon with actions that we can all take to intervene and do everything within our powers to not have this all too likely future come about. So, in conclusion, I return to GePeTo with this question. Can you provide me with 3 possible quotes that will leave the readers inspired to take action? And here's the first one. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. That's from Robert Swan, OBE Polar Explorer. And it's a reminder that individual and collective action is crucial. Every step we take matters in protecting our world. Quote number 2, the climate crisis has already been solved. We already have the facts and solutions. All we have to do is to wake up and change. That's from Greta Thunberg. It's a call to awaken to the solutions already within our grasp, urging each of us to act with awareness and purpose. And quote number 3, you cannot get through a single day without having an impact on the world around you. What you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. That's from Jane Goodall. It's a powerful reminder that we all are agents of change, able to make choices that contribute to a better, more sustainable future. Thank you for listening and reading. This is Brad Swift, your Right on Purpose coach. Have a great day. May you live your life on purpose.